for coming.
Thanks for having me.
And we also do have with us Angel Mbuthia, Jubilee Youth League Chairperson. Thank you for coming in, Angel.
Thank you, Remy, for having me.
And we have with us Kidi Mwaga, convener, Inter-Parties Youth Forum. Kidi, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Remy.
And we have with us Stephen Bugoy, LSK Council member. Thank you so much for coming, Stephen.
Thank you very much.
Right. So, you know, for many, it may seem that we have a constitutional crisis because we have a deputy president-elect who is Kithure Kindiki, and now we do have a deputy president, Rigathi Gachagua, which we are told or informed that he is still deputy president. So talks of this being a constitutional crisis is not correct. So because we have two lawyers here, let me begin here with Stephen. Please elaborate that for us further.
Kenya doesn't have a constitutional crisis. We have a deputy president who is Rigathi Gachagua, and his dismissal was stopped by a court of law. So whatever the Senate did is stopped until, is stayed until the matter has been heard, which is supposed to go back on 24th of October. Yes. This is another matter in Kirugoya, which stopped the swearing in of Professor Kindiki. So I can tell you as of now, we only have one deputy president, who is Rigathi Gachagua.
Right. Kidi, your perspective.
Well, I will agree entirely with what Stevie, my colleague and former schoolmate, is saying. We were together at the University of Nairobi. Yes, I agree with what Steve is saying. But then over and above that is that there is a need to make sure that most of these processes are tested judicially. So that if and when, in the wisdom of the government of the day, or lack of it, it goes ahead and acts in disregard of that court order, then what is that going to portend for our institutional development? Remember, part of the place we are coming from is that we have decried the disregard to court orders. So then, is it an opportunity for Kenya Kwanza to conduct itself within the law? Or is it an instance where it is going to conduct itself in the fashion of political impunity? So we wait to see, it is a wait and see scenario.
I see.
But we must also remember that we have a substantive deputy president on account of the determinations by the High Court.
I see. Now, of course, the events from yesterday evening to today, they're quite different. If you've not been following them, you might get lost in what's been happening, right? So, coupled with what they've said and your perspective, what is it?
Well, we know that Rigathi Gachagua is still Kenya's deputy president. Kenya's last bastion of hope, the judiciary, has pronounced itself on the matter. So we wait until the 25th, and I think the Kirugoya High Court's pronouncement today gave a different date. That means whatever noise Moses Kure is making out there is null and void. It's the judiciary that's supposed to swear in whoever is supposed to be sworn in. They cannot be the same people issuing orders and disregarding them. I guarantee you, the CJ will not be swearing in anyone tomorrow or any day before the matter is heard in court. So let's rest easy. We know William Ruto is Kenya's president. Rigathi Gachagua is deputy president. Kithure Kindiki, he's still serving as the CS in charge of Interior and National Coordination of Government. There is no lacuna. Kenya is still a going concern. Let's focus on what's important to us, and that's keeping the nation going.
All right, Angel.
Yes, I think that I really hope that Kenyans are watching, because if this was the pace at which we would take when setting up and ensuring job creation or fighting corruption, I think America and the Americans, Japanese and the likes would be coming to Kenya for benchmarking. I hope Kenyans have seen that this country can actually become better if we are deliberate about the things that we want to achieve. And if we put our minds and our hearts to it the way they have put their minds and their hearts to ensuring that DP Gachagua goes home or is sent home or is on his way home, the same way they can make all the other things happen. The same way they can make Kenya a better country to attract investment, a country that gives promise to young people like myself, a country that a country that is for all of us. It shouldn't be that when Kenyans are being asked, what do you think about what's going on right now, and you talk about mixed reactions. And I was telling my colleagues that they are rightful to have the mixed reactions. They are rightful to be confused, because I mean, where are they? They are so surprised at the speed at which things are moving, and when other more important things are being deliberated, they take forever. So this is something that I really do hope that Kenyans are taking notes. I hope that Kenyans are watching, and I hope Kenyans and the youth of Kenya are seeing what Mr. Ruto is doing, because he's trying to promote someone who we know and associate with the loss of the over 60 or up to the 200 young people that were lost when they were fighting for their constitutional right. And that blood is still in their hands. And I still call this government a God-forsaken government. If you take anything from it, you will be cast.
Right. Stephen, the ODM leadership is of the perspective that the parliament is under capture by the executive, you know, in regards to the pace at which they're taking to make decisions and voting. I mean, today we had a record 236 members all approving the deputy president-elect. What's your perspective on that?
I want to start with helping a Kenyan understand that Kenyan government is supposed to have 3 arms of government, and is the assumption of the draft of the constitution that those 3 institutions shall operate on checks and balances, and with the separation of powers clearly indicated, and also proper independence and interdependence where necessary. Unfortunately, our parliament is under state capture by His Excellency Ruto. And I say that because we can see since they were sworn in how the tendency of how they have been operating on mob approach. They went to the ground during the finance bill. They sought the opinion of the Kenyans. Kenyans were loud and clear that we don't want that bill because of these clauses, how it's going to affect our lives, the hardship we are facing. And they could not hear any of that. Kenyans were in thousands in the street on the day of 18th, on 20th and 25th of June. They were in thousands in the street, and they never saw the screens. The other day they were sent to the public again, last week but one, to collect opinion about how they feel about the impeachment. Kenyans made a clear voice that we want, if you're sending anyone home, send them home all. But how we have been seeing them react, there's a lot of lack of objectivity, and you can see there are people who are just operating on a mob reaction. Even some of our distinguished learned colleagues who are in parliament, and they're really making us feel very ashamed of associating ourselves with them. Because to be honest, when you see a professor of law or a doctor of law trying to push some political narrative with disregard of the Constitution, knowing very well that there are various provisions of the Constitution being violated, there is a reason why the law gave the president 14 days to send a nominee. There is a reason why the drafters of the Constitution gave us 60 days to discuss, for the Parliament to discuss. And
you know, there's a talk of a grey area, yes, that even if it is 2 weeks or 60 days, it is not per se stipulated that it has to entirely be 2 weeks or 60 days. Even so the pace we've seen is actually okay. Can you dispel that? It's not okay
because if you had a hearing in court, and the matter today you take a plea in the morning, then in the afternoon the hearing is done, then at night the judgment is delivered, will you go home happy saying that was okay because the judiciary was very expeditious? No. You need time to prepare, you need time to respond. There is a reason why we have this time, because if the nominee has some issues, like we have an issue as young people, that the nominee was the CS of Interior and the police were killing young people. How will you air such a view to the Parliament or Parliament to consider when they are considering such a nominee? There is not that platform because they want to ensure everything happens within 60 minutes. Why to not capture the feeling or even consider a room where even any objection can be raised? And this hurry is what everybody is wondering, whether these people are really honest with or candid with how they're doing their jobs, especially being honest with their duty as parliamentarian. And I can tell you the consequences of this legislation will be dire come 2027.
Right. Mundiora, let's look at the aspect of public participation. It's a contentious issue whereby we've heard the Speaker also not being quite clear on whether it is regarded in this matter, where the DP, of course, is nominated and now he's elect, in that manner. What's your perspective and understanding on this thing?
Well, again, we have an opportunity to advance our jurisprudence. We've never been in this situation before, but we've seen how counties have handled matters where the governor was impeached or removed or deceased. And of course, the public participation issue is important, but then would it compare to a general election where we had the president and the deputy president go across the country seeking mandate from all Kenyans? Well, I think in the event that a deputy president is removed or deceased, maybe we should amend our constitution to read that we just have a vice president who will be appointed by the president, now like his own appointee. But then it can't be as substantive as the one who went through a general election and was elected. So we have an opportunity to explore this matter. But that said, let's face it, the removal of Rigathi Gachagua is not going to change anything on the ground. It's not going to impact on the high cost of living. It's not going to resolve the scandals that this government has brought to us. It's not going to change anything. So, in fact, we should just let Kenyans know that it has been proven that if those in charge actually intended to deliver to the people, they would. We've seen them burn the midnight oil to deliver on these subjects and other selfish interests that they've had before. They did it at the National Assembly. We saw it at the Senate yesterday. So let's just focus on the fact that we have people in office who are capable and competent enough to deliver the dream they promised to Kenyans, but they have chosen not to, but instead are chasing selfish interests.
Right. You know, Kitty, some analysts are of the perspective that this entire time the eyes were on Kindiki Kithure and not entirely, DP Gachagua, because he had a purpose. So having him serve it this entire time and now having Kindiki come in was all planned out. What's your perspective on that? Are you of the same thought?
Well, we have expended a lot of time discussing Gachagua's removal, and I think that we have fallen into the trap of the political, particularly of Kenya Kwanza, because you realize that these last 2 weeks or almost a month, we the people have resorted to discussing this issue, and we have not paused to ask ourselves that what exactly have these people attempted to distract us from? Because remember, even the removal of Gachagua was now turned into a reality TV show, and it was being broadcasted from morning to evening. I was getting home at midnight last evening, and Senate was in session. So then, to answer your question, whether Gachagua was a special purpose vehicle or not, speaks to the duplicitous nature of this government. Because remember, when they nominated Rigathi Gachagua said some statements in the run-up to the last general elections that are still very shocking to the conscience of many Kenyans. And even in the aftermath of the elections and Kenya Kwanza was declared the winner, it must also be remembered that in moments of leadership, people rise up to that moment of leadership. But remember when the Kenya Kwanza first came in, President was guilty of making some very unpresidential utterances about there were threats being there on the life of the former ABC chair and such, and some of us attempted to call him out. But then I think he quickly realized that he was a president, and while on the other hand, the deputy has continued to make statements that are detrimental to the national unity of this country. So I think that, and one thing we must appreciate, that while we are here, and all of us agree that the way, the manner, and the fashion in which this impeachment has been conducted has been less than elegant, has been less than judicial, has raised questions on, on principles of natural justice, right to be heard, giving people opportunity to respond to allegations raised against them. That Gachagua is going is also, I think, is a good thing. It is a good thing. But we, the people, must maintain the focus that what are they distracting us from? Remember, right now, as we speak, K24 has been given to Adani. We do not know to what extent they've pushed the airport deal. Remember, our people are still suffering in the hospitals because out of greed, common greed within Kenya Kwanza, we have SHIF in place instead of NIF, while SHIF is inferior in every aspect to NIF. So those are things we need to focus on, and some of us are not going to drop the ball because the government, in its wisdom or lack of it, has decided to create a circus for us. Thank you.
So this is a process that is judicial and political,
Yes.
but it's weighing on one scale more.
Yes.
And like I said to you earlier, like before we even began this conversation, the public is wary.
Yes.
It doesn't feel like it has a going forward or coming back, and it also feels like we may have a swearing in, and something can be flouted. If you do not understand what the Constitution says or legal laws, then you can be very lost. So I'll ask you, Angel, judicial or political? We are on a scale here. How can we be able to, tell Kenyans here exactly how to look at this? Because do we have jurisprudence at the end of the day, really?
Well, actually, this is a very interesting process. Even when I was looking at watching the proceedings of the impeachment, it reminds me of the American judicial system where there's a jury that listens and then the judge that just declares the decision of the jury. And so the jury in this case were the senators, and then we had the speaker. I think a lot was going on in that Senate. It was largely political, obviously, because more of a political process. It's just that the judicial aspect of it is what anchors the whole process of it. Otherwise, we would not have a country. We would be like Sudan or Somalia because of that lack of that anchor. But you see, even when the lawyers were deliberating, they would keep on saying that this is not a criminal, it's not a court case, it's not a real court case, so we don't have to prove so many of these things like we would prove them in a normal court proceeding. So you could see there were calling it quasi-judicial in itself also creates a loophole, saying that, okay, we don't have to go the court way because this is also a political process, so we don't have to prove that. I had one of the lawyers of the National Assembly say that they don't have to, when they were answering some questions to the senators. And then it played, of course, largely a political process, because even when we were talking about in our last conversation here about who are the potential nominees to the DP, and you could see Nyanza were fronting Gladys Wanga, you could see
Raila Odinga's also.
Raila Odinga, Mudavadi was also in question, and you could see Mount Kenya, of course, with Waiguru and Kangata, and of course Kindiki himself. And you see all that was just being played in the gallery of the senators. You know, they were saying that however you vote, someone from your region could be selected. It could be Gladys Wanga. So let's impeach this guy so that Gladys Wanga can come in, or let's impeach this guy so that Mudavadi can come in. So Mr. Ruto is playing a game of chess, and unfortunately we are his pawns, and he's moving those pawns the way he likes, and it's very unfortunate what he's doing. I'm hoping that the judiciary will really stamp its authority in this matter and be able to adjudicate and ensure that if this guy goes home, let him go home properly. Let him go home rightfully. If he is unwell, as he has said he's unwell, let him have the right to be heard. I don't think this is something he can run away from eventually. At the end of the day, we'll have to deliberate. If he's going home, he goes home, and we move on. But then again, he should also not be scared of what happens in future, because I think some of the criminal charges might be lifted, and then hopefully he'd be able to run in future. He doesn't have to be the deputy president of Mr. Ruto. He can do other things as well. And then we don't have to keep on moving around this political process. If Ruto wants to move on with that guy, because ideally, how would they work together if he were to become deputy president? It would just be a game of Mr. Ruto showing up in state functions.
If he actually survives this, then he would remain.
Yeah, then it would be a competition of Mr. Ruto goes to state functions, he sits here, then he also comes with I mean, with
our president also had the same unfortunate misfortune.
And we are the biggest
so
losers
he would have a way of doing it also, because I mean, he's the president.
Yes, and Mr. Gachagua would be waking up every day at 5 a.m. This time not to serve Kenyans as he had purported, but he would be waking up at 5 a.m. to ask himself, how do I finish Mr. Ruto? And we are the ones who are going to bear that brand.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, I read an article which mentioned that one of the undoings of, Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua was that he did not understand that Mount Kenya was one that the president is galvanizing, and he was still having his campaigns there. There was a push and pull of power, that if he played his politics better, then we wouldn't be in this situation at the end of the day. And then the second thing, Stephen, do you believe now that, the president's party is happy now that we have Deputy President-elect Kindiki Kithure, because he was an option before in 2022?
I think they may be happy because they are the ones who approved his name in Parliament, some of them, but not all of them. But all I know is the Deputy President, Rigathi Gachagua, one of his greatest undoing was being honest when it comes to disclosing that these people came into together for selfish gain. He told us clearly that they have an agreement. That's why Kingi is the speaker. That's why Wetangula is the speaker. And the agreement is there. None of them refuted the content of that agreement. So they may try to have all these issues they are raising around us. And what brought the war to Rigathi Gachagua's doorstep was the fact that he joined the party without any political muscle. And now he was galvanizing a political grouping so that he can use it to negotiate his political power in 2027. Therefore, that's why he had to face the resistance. It is as straightforward as that. It was nothing more or less of anything like that, because this group for the longest time, as we had, most of these political positions, whether in CS or PSs, are negotiated before this. And that's
so is it because now his lack of experience and also not being able to have quite the number of strong, people behind him? See, when Ruto, when he was President Ruto, when he was Deputy President, he had quite the number of politicians behind him, and we don't have the same.
We couldn't have the same because Gachagua joined as one man, and from what we hear, he joined because Ruto proposed his name and insisted he has to stick with him. Others say he funded the party, others say he was a close associate to the president for all those reasons. But he never joined with any political power. In that, he never brought in any political party, he never brought in any people elected under his party or anything. Ruto joined Jubilee, TNA when he had URP. So he came in with a block, and he came in with a block of Rift Valley. If you can remember, it was Gemma and the Rift Valley narrative that was being pushed by Uhuru and Ruto when they were coming together. So this time around, Ruto UDA was the only party which they were riding on. So the moment Rigathi Gachagua started galvanizing his group, which is a tribal grouping of Mount Kenya, he had to face resistance. Why? Because that meant if that is successful, and right now people are keep on talking, unaguza mlima, utiguza mlima. That's a narrative, a political narrative, and it has started to entrench in the Mount Kenya region that you are no longer now attacking Gachagua, you are attacking Mount Kenya region because we are the one who brought this basket. And Ruto himself has been fueling it. He came to Muranga, he took it to the podium and told the people of Muranga that Mount Kenya is the biggest shareholder in his government because they brought in a lot of support toward his success. So therefore, I want to assume when the DP is executing his duty and saying that we indeed live in a shareholding system, I want to assume he's acting as a proper principal assistant to that person.
I see. Right, Mudiara.
Yeah.
Now that we have court orders stopping the appointment or the swearing in of Deputy President-elect Kithure Kindiki, there's a perspective also of now, Kithure, of course, having issues, of course, assenting to that. But with the seat as it is, and with the history that we know the seat has, for that matter, if he is to assume, the role of DP, should he feel safe? I mean, this is historic. We've never experienced this before. We've never had, an impeachment at this scale. So how should he now sit on that seat with what confidence? Or should we say he has now muscle, as Stephen, he has mentioned when it comes to the President Ruto had muscle. Do you believe, Deputy-elect has muscle?
He should sit as though he's sitting on a knife edge. Remember, he has been tossed aside before and someone else preferred, even though he was the most competent and suitable. So this is the most impossible position for any individual. Now, that aside, his constituency, the numbers he brings to the table compared to the numbers of the person that was ousted, there's no comparison. So if I were Kithure Kindiki, I would be hesitant even to take this position. Imagine someone brought not just numbers but resources as well, but they've been tossed aside for doing what? Nothing that's very different from what the boss was doing. During his defense, Rigathi Gachagua demonstrated to Kenyans that everything I was doing, I learned from my boss. And if you analyze critically, you'll realize that there's nothing Rigathi Gachagua did that wasn't furthering William Ruto's agenda, even though it could be in the narrow, selfish line. But then he was doing it to sustain William Ruto in the political arena. So if he was punished for doing that, then Professor Kithure Kindiki should be very worried. Remember, he was in charge during last year's protests where Kenyans lost their lives, properties were destroyed.
It's even this year, but it feels like last year because it's
during the
the
Baba Mandamano.
Oh, I see.
The finance bill.
Got you, okay.
And then this year, with all the chaos, he was in charge.
So then
Shakahola,
motion number one, impeachment motion number one.
Now, Shakahola happened when, who was the boss? Kindiki.
Impeachment motion number two.
Now, if I were Kithure Kindiki, sincerely speaking, I would.
And that's a criminal, right?
Yeah.
Yes, they are. And like Rigathi Gachagua's charges.
Yeah.
So you asked if where we are at is a political process or a judicial one. I'll tell you, the political bit is done. The trial by peers has yielded results and they've been challenged in courts. Numbers were exercised arbitrarily. Now we are in a process that's going to be judicious. So let's see if the process will be found to have been wanting. And if that's the case, then let's prepare for a very turbulent future for this country. Rigathi Gachagua was not given ample opportunity to defend himself. That's for sure. We know that Senate could have waited, but they chose not to give him more time. He was there when he was asked to be at the Senate during the first day. During the second day, when he was taken ill, they should have considered to give him more time. They did not. Now, the only regret I've got here is that we had an opportunity to bring down one of the people who are messing this country. But then, like the Kenya Kwanza regime has done since they got into office, they fumbled even on this one, which is why we keep insisting that this regime is not fit to lead this country.
I see.
We began the conversation about Ruto must go. He went to the people during the public participation with regard to the impeachment of the deputy president. And Kenyans said, Rigathi Gachagua needs to go, but you should go first. We still insist. If you even fumbled in the impeachment or removal from office of your deputy, then you're not fit. Tabitha Karanja confirmed who sponsored this bill. Muongo Mutuse with his lies.
Mwengi Mutuse.
Mwengi.
It's Mwengi.
Mwengi Mutuse.
Well, he did lie that the motion was his, even when he was cross-examined.
Yes.
But then we were told that it's the boss who has a problem with his principal assistant. That's why this marriage is no longer tenable. That's why the impeachment motion was there.
Okay. Now, hold on to that because, you know, one of the senators said Elisha Ongoya may have had a very strong, you know, case, but we are looking at the numbers here, which are not on his side, and that is why we are seeing what we are seeing right now. But you will give me your perspective on that. Our viewers have sent in a lot of their responses in regards to, you know, we were asking if they believe Kithure Kindiki, you know, will be able to meet the expectations of the office of the deputy president. And we have a whole lot of responses, especially here on Facebook. Kimani Ngugi says, Sina maoni mimi. Ali Masha Ali says, he can only meet, oh wow, okay. That's another thing. Just let me read another one here. Nelson Chelula says, which expectation do you have as a, you know, a station? You know, all right. Quite, let me say this. The responses here are quite, you know, emotional for that matter. For the I do understand that. For the sake of, you know, the rest of our audience, I think I'll just, you know, leave out some. But we appreciate you sending in your messages. We have Daniel Kenya who says he is not there to meet the office expectations. He is there to split Mount Kenya votes and be a nice, obedient servant. Right. Let's get the other response here. We have Wamburi 11 says, no, even the dockety is moving out. He leaves a failure. Nobody will ever forget the pain of Gen Z parents. Right. We also have here Njuguna who says, how now? Okay. We have at Wiz who says he's an unmatched professor. All right. We have here another one from Deno Mancini. He says, yes, he is not ambitious. He is timid and does everything he is told. He will bend the law for Ruto. He has no consistency, so he can easily be removed too. He is corrupt. He can easily leave the office voluntarily if told so. Okay. Let's get the other one. Harrison says he does, but he is not the right one. He should wait for 2027 elections. Okay. Right, well, there you go. That's just quite a few from our audience. And again, thank you so much for sending it in. We're engaging with you and, of course, our panelists here. So, Kida, I'd asked you a question. And also, let me add on what Cleophas Malala said. While he was, you know, outside the hospital, I think just from visiting the, you know, the DP, he said that he was very hurt. And he kept asking the president if he was, you know, if he had a heart, you know, given what the president, the DP is going through right now. But he said something very key, that be sure that the DP will finish his term up till, you know, up to 2027, right? And now we're seeing these court orders, which may or may, you know, however the outcome is, will determine a lot, which may go positively or not. So what's your perspective on that?
Well, my perspective one is that the removal of the deputy president gives President William Ruto a chance now to pick someone he wants and feels comfortable that he can work with without the baggage of using that person to win an election. And I think that
so was this the case here? If we're saying it's, you know...
Of course, now he has nominated Professor Kithure Kindiki.
Yeah.
In politics, there is what is called a working combination. A working combination, it is something that is, you see it even in marriages, that when a man is what you call strong-willed, then ordinarily, for some reason, they end up with, you know, laid-back partners. Or when a woman is strong-willed, the man tends to be
opposite.
Laid-back, yes. So in politics, I think that is also true.
So who is laid back here? These are very strong individuals who has been laid back.
Between Professor and the President, Professor Kithure, you know, is laid back. Again.
Oh, I see what you mean. My mind was on DP Gachagua, but go ahead.
Yes,
and then maybe I just add about what he spoke about, the combination. These two actually worked together during the ICC cases at The Hague, and they defeated justice. Then, so maybe that's the history he's talking about. That's the chemistry.
I will neither confirm nor deny, but then we must also say this: that it is Dick Cheney in his memoir who said that the vice presidency is where ambitions go to die. But some people have demystified this, one of them being William Ruto, William was able to demystify this in part because he came into that office with political insurance. That as much as they might have disagreed over resources and its distribution within Jubilee, he had a means to push back if and when his partners within the coalition attempted to go for his jugular. Remember the days of Kamata Kamata Fridays, and for some times we thought that we were having a credible one. And I'm actually disappointed that Kenya Kwanza has not seen a banana peel. It has not crossed over to go and slide over. Including if right now they had embarked on a credible war on corruption, we wouldn't be told that this country has got no money to embark on capital expenditure, and as a consequence, we have to give away strategic national assets to get money. While at the same time, the government is living large. You just look at those inconsistencies and you wish this government just got its acts together for a second. So back to your question, that then regarding, Professor Kithure having no constituency, two, having improved his portfolio with about 60 million in 2 years, while practitioners, brilliant like Steve, are unable to get their clients to pay them so there's a lot of pending bill, speaks to his willingness to be amenable to do what people do within the corridors of power. And so it brings me into the words of Saul Alinsky in his book, Rules for Radicals, that politics is a game, not of angels, but of angles, where our opponents are always immoral and we are always moral, where laws are enacted for common good, but implemented for common greed. Thank you.
Right. Now, there are a lot of clear rules, or guidelines in the Constitution and the judicial laws. I mentioned earlier how, and I was asking Steve this, that it felt as if the 60 days were not to be adhered to. It was to just be done, and the 14 days or so. So what we have seen right now, and the unrest from the public, the unsureness of what next, and also looking at Moses Kuria, on social media celebrating or saying that there will be a swearing in tomorrow, there is no peace from the masses and no confidence in our laws at the same time, Angel. So how can a normal Mwananchi be able to just bear the brunt of what they're feeling? Again, he's mentioned that this is a distraction because we have SHA, we had the protests, we had even adoptions, we're still talking about some of them are missing. We're looking at Adani deals, we're looking at Ketraco, we're looking at so many things here that we are in the air. And you'll see this headline of Gachagua here, and then there's an Adani, they're using the deal to get loans, at the bottom of the paper. So give us that perspective.
I think they're rightful to feel what they're feeling. It is good to process that because this is a man that was elected by millions of Kenyans. And at the same time, his strategy of navigating this for Mr. Gachagua, he knew that he stands no chance in the Senate, in the Parliament, in the National Assembly, and even at the judiciary, which is not 100% guaranteed that he'll make it through. So he knew his best audience is the public, Kenyans. And so from the first day when he called the press to his home in Karen for the 7 p.m. Interview, that was the beginning of these motions. That's where he began his proceedings himself. And he explained to Kenyans bit by bit. And he tried to give himself to the public as much as he could. And as much as Parliament was really trying to dot their I's and cross their T's, he saw that he was now going to fall into that. And I'm not surprised that he fell ill conveniently at a time when he was just about to make his presentation. And for him to do that, from a political analysis angle, I think it worked best for him when I look at the whole process.
Him falling ill?
Yes, him falling ill, that was quite convenient for him politically, not being there, let's say. And him not being there, he had already done very well with his lawyers, Elisha and Jiro and Paul Muite, senior counsel. They had done a great job. excuse me. So there was no point of taking him back to the stand where he will be slaughtered through cross-examination. Bring down the very thing he has been building since he started communicating at 7 p.m. in his current home residence, where we listened to him for over 2 hours. He had already made his case then. And it was enough to plant a seed in all of us. That's why we have mixed reactions, because we are seeing a man who purportedly is going in to have his head chopped, and he comes with he does not have any criminal offense that he has committed. And so it is rightful for us to lose sleep, because we are going to see a guy going home not because of the right thing or the process has been followed. If he's going home for the right things, let him go home for the right things. And if the process that is being undertaken by the National Assembly together with Senate and the Office of the President, if what they are following is the rightful process as we have prescribed in our Constitution that we elected in 2010, then let him go home the right way. Not the way he's going. He's being sent off in a manner that is really, the case was not justified. We saw the clips that were being aired. I was even wondering, some clips were even speaking for him more than any other thing. Like the clip that was being played when he was speaking to the people in Kayole, and he was saying that, you know, hamtafukuzwa and trying to taunganisha hii mambo. And so, and even when the main witness was being asked, kuunganisha watu, is it wrong to say that? Why are you offended by saying that? Has he broken any law by saying that? And you could see that the people of Kayole who were watching that, they were asking themselves, you mean this guy is going to be sent home because he was fighting for us? So it is right and it is justified for Kenyans to feel what they are feeling, and Kenyans should not stop following that process, because that same process that we are following when we are referring to the Constitution of Kenya, because we don't know what's happening after this, what's happening after this. Next time when we are impeaching the president, we will know exactly the process to follow.
I see.
Yeah.
Right. Now, we have, you know, basically what we are seeing right now, like basically what all of you have basically, you know, said. But Cleophas Malala, okay, and the supporters of the deputy president are sure that this will go through, because we are they're of the opinion we are missing something about the character of the deputy president. The fact that, you know, it was 5 out of 11 counts that, of course, impeached him, and of course he won the rest, then there's something we're not understanding, that he could actually be onto something, but we are so focused on the grounds of his impeachment other than he's actually winning. Would you be of that perspective? Do you think he's winning?
We should have been asking ourselves, what are the grounds that he was found guilty of? One of them, they claim that he undermined the independence of the judiciary. For the utterances he made about a particular judge, and indicated he's going to file a petition, of which I think Mwengi Mutuse filed, confirmed that a petition was filed to challenge in the JSC, challenging the conduct of that judge, which is a constitutional right for any Kenyan to challenge such a, if you feel the conduct of a judge or a judicial officer is unbecoming, you can, or you're not comfortable, you have a right to challenge. What becomes of it is now what the determination of the JSC proceedings. The other issue, he talked about, he undermined the intelligence department. And what did he say? That the intelligence is not providing the right brief to the president. It is true. They are not providing the right brief. Or maybe they were providing the right brief and the head of state was ignoring it, because we saw the president speak to the nation through this camera saying that nobody was killed during the protest. Yeah. Nobody was abducted during the... We are advocates of the High Court of Kenya. We were in those streets. We went to those police stations. We collected our clients and members of the public from many funny places that they had been dumped. Some people, their children were dumped in a dump site, and they're laying lifeless bodies lying in quarries. All this, we all saw it. But Ruto said none of it was happening. So was the intelligence being proper or improper? So that's a question that, if you look at the offenses that Gachagua was told he was found guilty of, vis-a-vis the issues that we felt probably are legally weighty, like laundering, money laundering. I expected such claims which the members of parliament were moving a lot of motions are going to be, there is a lot of evidence. Is the government with a lot of machineries, with proper investigative skills and better personnel. We expected those are the issues they're going to articulate better, but all the issues we saw that he was being found guilty of, to be honest, were just political actions. And that's why Malala was right to say that if that is the approach they are using, Gachagua is here to stay. He's here to stay because the parliament and the Senate decided to flout the constitutional procedures, and they have gone ahead even to make a further worse mistake.
But you see, what confidence can we possibly have, in this process when things that need to take a particular time for even the confidence? I mean, if you're listening to the process of that hearing and the argument of the lawyers, for example, Elisha Ngoya, you could tell some aspects needed time that even, Mwengi Mutuse would agree to. Whether he was just saying yes or no, he couldn't elaborate further, of course, but, in that particular context, right? So now we have the court issuing an order, there'll be no appointment or swearing in of this individual until this is looked at. Yes. But then there's still the doubt, because most of these laws are written down, but it is the confidence that they're not really adhered to. And then there's a confusion of whether people really understand what's in the Constitution or not, because articles are being quoted left, right, and center, but the clarity of what they hold, like what you're saying right now, is what is not clear, despite them being written.
I think in 2010, our parents and our senior siblings and some of us, we had the benefit of voting the Constitution. Maybe we voted without educating other people, or our parents voted without educating us, and they passed the Constitution. But what we are doing now, we are breathing life to the Constitution. Since the year started, we have been interpreting every article, as we move, depending on the circumstances. Right now, there is another issue which is being litigated in court under Article 137, and asking ourselves, if you're being nominated as a deputy president, there are those qualities that you must meet according to the Constitution. And one of the qualities, you must be a Kenyan citizen, you must not owe allegiance to a foreign country, you must not belong, you must either be nominated by a political party. All these qualifications, you need to meet them even if you're replacing an impeached deputy president. And another fundamental requirement, you must not be a public officer or a state officer at the time of your nomination. So these are matters which you're going to see being challenged in court, that is Article 137. So many questions of the Constitution are going to be interpreted during this season. And the reason why we are doing that, and I'm happy that, because this is giving Kenyans an opportunity to understand how the process is done. So we can agree that there was less civic education, but even what we're doing right now, we are trying to create awareness, people to know what the process entailed and how it's supposed to go. And I can say for a fact that the fact that our parliamentarian only shout, Koimbori, the member of parliament of Juja, say they were given 2 million to pass the finance bill in total disregard of everything that it was costing. James Gakwea, the member of Embakasi, is it East or Central or something?
North.
No, actually, yeah. North. He was very clear that they were given money. To do what? To impeach Gachagua. So you find these are people who don't even want to think through the issues. That's why when you hear someone, and some of us tell you that Gachagua is not going to go anywhere, because the process being used to impeach him is unprocedural. And Okia Mutata, the senator of Busia, was a bit quite more clear and sober when he said that it's not about the love for Gachagua. It's not about the love for Gachagua. It's about the love for the Constitution and the love for the procedure, that you cannot sit back and watch the Constitution being flouted so that someone can be impeached for political reason. Yet the same Constitution, if you don't defend it now, who is going to defend it when the time is coming for you? We saw them kill us in the streets. If you never spoke that time, we will not be there to speak about Gachagua being impeached. So it's our business right now to speak, not because we love Gachagua so much, but we can't allow them impeach him without following the right procedure. Yeah.
Right. Now, let's take a look at DP-elect Kindiki. He was the only cabinet secretary who did not lose his... Yeah, sure. Okay.
Senior State is saying something that is very profound. that it is also important that the people of Kenya appreciate that the forces of status quo won in 2010, as opposed to forces of reforms and change. Because the way the constitution is structured, it was intended to consolidate power around one individual or one institution. We were lied to that we were having a poor presidential system, but with strict checks. Where are those checks? Remember when Jubilee came in, the first term, one of the most profound legislations a lot of Kenyans still remember was the Security Amendment Laws. And look at the effect of the Security Amendment Laws in undermining the Constitution or implementing the Constitution in reverse. Secondly, look at how we were told that we were having an enhanced representation. The net effect is that we have dysfunctional county assemblies and a dysfunctional National Assembly. So that I think part of the conversation that people like Steve, myself, Angel, Bwana Katibo here, Naibu Arais here, we are saying is that we must speak. Part of what we must say is that we must be able to audit the Constitution and ask ourselves, why can't we have representation taking place in the counties and possibly cut counties by more than half, have them 14, so that representation takes place there. Then in Nairobi, we only have a federal parliament of, say, 47 or 60. And then we eviscerate the presidency. This thing that is costing us a lot of trouble, because every election year we say it is our turn to eat, let us eviscerate it completely and take functions to mashinani. And functions, it is where function, resources, and functions go together. So that what we are left with up here are just 4 or 5 functions, say defense, education, finance, for purposes of fiscal and monetary harmony, and education. Yes, education, those 5, if we can have them up here. So I think that is part of the conversation we are going to engage in. But until then, we shall continue calling out Ruto's government, not out of vindictiveness, but out of love for this country. Thank you.
Mudira, I was talking about, now we are about to wind up, so lady and gentlemen, your final comments. Kindiki Kithure is the cabinet secretary who still retained his position when the cabinet was dissolved, right? And we are meeting him here right now. So the questions to what will happen, if he does ascend to, being the deputy president, again, he's cabinet secretary. I mean, when we had that dissolved, Musalia Mudavadi was handling all the dockets for that matter. So what's your perspective on the same, especially him having not lost his, position at that time?
Well, he'll be expected to relinquish his position as cabinet secretary, that's for sure. I hope he does that tonight, now that things are moving too fast in this country. Then, after...
We'll get into another long conversation.
After he does that,
yeah.
We expect that someone else will assume that role. There has been conversation that they intend to change the way things are set up so that a deputy president is assigned roles, specific roles in cabinets. But that's a conversation that I'm sure will be had. And now that you brought up the issue about Professor Kithure Kindiki, I sit here today as evidence or exhibits, if that can surface, of his incompetence. I was abducted. I have illegally been arrested and detained. Like Malala during Uhuru Kenyatta's regime, I was put in the boot of a car for hours during the Gen Z protests. Now, this is the person you would like me to clap for when he's been promoted to go to a higher position, when in a lower position he was not able to deliver. There's the mission he's been carrying out in the North Rift. Reports are that they've not succeeded. And then there are all these other indictments that have been laid out here and even out there, that he has not met the threshold. And now we are choosing to promote him to a higher position. How incompetent can we be? My question to the president is simple, and Kidi helped me with these the question to the president is Rigathi Gachagua a sacrificial cow to the gods, or is he a carcass
to the political
to
dogs?
the dogs?
All right. Okay, final comment. Stephen, Angel, let me begin with you, Angel. Your final comments very shortly on this
first of all,
matter.
I'd like to celebrate Kenyans who, while we were watching the proceedings, went on to the Adani court hearings and hacked into and occupied the court proceedings where Adani was being discussed and about to be passed. So it was adjourned. Now we have more time to be following that case closely. And secondly, I'd like to wish Kenyans a an early happy Mashujaa Day. Let's not forget the young Kenyans who fought for this country. Let's not forget their spirit that lingers in our corridors of politics and governance. They went there because of their constitutional rights. Let's not forget them. Let's light a candle in our hearts for them on that day.
All right, Angel.
Thank you.
Stephen.
I think I'm glad with the conversation we're having as a country, and I can say it's a constitutional time that this constitution is going to receive a lot of support, and right now the country is in the hands of the judiciary. If the CRJ and the Chief Justice were to turn up tomorrow and swear in Professor Kindiki, then automatically that will be molestation to the constitution, and I know the CJ is a person of principle. We don't expect to see her there. We expect her to respect the court's orders and to push for proper respect to the constitution. And I can remind Kenyans wherever they are that our parents have been celebrating the forefathers who fought for this country. Now we need to start celebrating the heroes that have been fighting in our lifetime during this Mashujaa Day, who have been fighting for this country, as we move forward to push for better respect to the Constitution and to the parliamentarians who have chosen to disregard the wishes of the people.
There's a lot of expectation on Mashujaa Day.
Yes, that is the time now for us. We are going to celebrate our first Mashujaa Day, where some of our colleagues whom we know fell as they fight for the respect of this Constitution.
All right, gentlemen, lady, thank you so much.
And I have a last word, Remy.
All of you, okay, fine. 2 seconds.
To rephrase the question that my brother is putting to the president, is that are they carving Rigathi Gachagua as a carcass unto the political gods, or are they carving him as a sacrifice unto the political hounds? While we might not have that answer, we must tell this administration that all factors held constant, if they do not change, history will record it, that this is the regime that lost a country. Thank you.
All right.
On Mashujaa Day, Kenyans have an opportunity to reflect.
My director is in my ear, yeah.
Let's all take a moment and remember the sacrifice that was made by those Kenyans who lost their lives, shed blood, tears, sweat, and even lost property. This regime did that.
It's not good for the nation.
All right. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I mean, there's so much to still talk about. There's so much to decipher. There's so much to break down, especially with the laws and the Constitution. But this is where we end our conversation. I appreciate you all for coming in tonight. And I know it's been such a hot day. You know, if we're to analyze everything, I think we'd go till midnight, like the Senate or the Parliament for that matter. Yes. But thank you once again for coming. Now, for our viewers, our guests tonight have been Muthiora Kariara, former deputy presidential candidate. We've also had Angel Mbudia, Jubilee Youth League chairperson. We've had Kidi Mwaga, convener, Inter-Parties Youth Forum, and Stephen Bugo, LSK Council member. Now, we had asked you earlier if you believe Kithure Kindiki meets the expectations of the office of the deputy president. And we have a few of your responses, or a couple of them for that matter, and most of you are quite like heated on that particular aspect. And we have here, he says, he's called Len from Kericho. He says the debate is fire, Kindiki akae pahali pake. All right. And we also do have Hillary Kamalishu says Kindiki is always a total mess and he cannot lure people. Right. And then now we also do have Nzoka Michael, let's wait for truthful man to be treated first. And also we have another response here from our viewer, Risia Rispa, who says, yes, if he chooses to be run by wrong advisors and respect his boss. Right. We also do have one more response here from Charlo Collins. He says, what if the problem is the head and they are changing the neck? Okay, quite interesting. Right. So with that mentioned, that is the end of our conversation tonight. But our bulletin is not yet over. We are now going into the sports news.
K24 Sports News, powered by Mozart Bet.
Back to the future. The future is simulate. Bet smarter. Win faster now. Be a winner.
Welcome back, and thank you so much for staying with us. Now let's take a look at the sports news. Now, Kenya's junior starlets went down fighting early Friday morning, losing 2-0 to England in their opening game at the FIFA